787-8 crashed in Ahmedabad shortly after takeoff.
4 people died in a plane crash.
The Air India plane crash.
Air India crash.
The deadly crash of the Air India flight.
Another day, another Boeing headline, but this one is pure nightmare fuel. Well, on June 12th, 2025, Air India Flight 171, a Boeing 787 Dreamliner, lifted off from Ahmedabad and turned into a fireball just 38 seconds later. 260 lives gone, and with them, the illusion that Boeing's crown jewel was untouchable. And it's the first fatal Dreamliner crash, and investigators say what they found could shatter Boeing's reputation forever. So, what really happened that day? And what role did Boeing's prized 787 Dreamliner play? Get ready for the jaw-dropping truth, because what they've just found is unbelievable. So let's start with where things went from routine to catastrophic.
Fuel supply to engines was in the cutoff mode. Fuel cutoff switches went off in 1 second. Both the engines shut seconds after takeoff. Fuel switch cutoff led to the crash. Cockpit recorder reveals pilots were confused.
Flight 171 rolled down the runway in Ahmedabad like any other long-haul service. The Dreamliner's twin Rolls-Royce Trent 1000 engines roared to life, pushing the aircraft skyward. For a few seconds, everything looked smooth, until it didn't. Without warning, both engines began losing thrust, almost simultaneously. When investigators pulled the flight data, they found something that didn't just raise eyebrows, it dropped jaws. Both fuel control switches had been moved to cut off. That's the aviation equivalent of yanking a car's keys out while you're flooring it on the freeway. Pilots only do that after landing, when the plane's at the gate. So why did it happen less than a minute into flight? The cockpit voice recorder captured a tense moment. One pilot asking why the engines were shut down, the other denying he'd touched them. In the chaos, the right engine began to spool up again, but the left never recovered. Heavy with fuel, low on speed, and only a few hundred feet up, the Dreamliner had no chance to climb away. 38 seconds after liftoff, it slammed into a packed neighborhood, igniting a fireball that lit up the morning sky and turned homes into rubble. For the families, the loss was immediate and unbearable. Some learned about the crash from breaking news before officials could call. Others stood in airport arrival halls, clutching welcome signs that would never be needed. What was supposed to be a reunion turned into a nightmare of identifying bodies and planning funerals. And here's the chilling part. This kind of failure isn't just rare, it's almost unheard of. Was it a freak coincidence? A hidden mechanical fault? A software glitch in the FADEC system? Or is this the smoking gun in a chain of warnings Boeing never acted on? Whatever the truth is, one thing's certain. The Dreamliner's first fatal crash wasn't a slow unraveling. It was an instant, catastrophic plunge. And it's forcing the aviation world to look a lot closer at Boeing's prized aircraft. To understand why this crash hit so hard, you need to know what the Boeing 787 Dreamliner was supposed to be. When it was unveiled back in 2007, Boeing didn't just roll out another airliner. They rolled out a revolution. They promised a jet that would be lighter, stronger, and far more efficient than anything that had ever flown. Instead of traditional aluminum, most of the airframe was built from carbon fiber composites. The first time a commercial jet of this size had done it. That meant less weight, more fuel efficiency, and the ability to fly farther without stopping. And Boeing didn't just sell the numbers, they sold the experience. The Dreamliner was built with passengers in mind, lowering the cabin altitude to around 6,000 feet instead of the usual 8,000 to reduce fatigue and headaches on long flights. Humidity levels were increased to keep skin and eyes from drying out mid-air, while the windows were made 30% larger than usual and fitted with electronic dimming instead of traditional pull-down shades. Combined with advanced aerodynamics and next-generation engines, these changes created a noticeably quieter cabin, promising travelers a more comfortable and relaxing journey from takeoff to landing. For airlines, it was a game-changer. About 20% better fuel burn, the ability to open new ultra-long-haul routes like London to Perth, and lower operating costs over time. On paper, it was a win for everyone. Passengers got comfort, airlines got efficiency, and Boeing got bragging rights as the leader in next-gen aviation. And for years, the Dreamliner was marketed as the safest, most advanced widebody in the skies. But here's where reality starts to bite. Because behind the sleek marketing videos and glowing headlines, the 787's history is littered with delays, technical glitches, and safety warnings that should have been red flags. And as we'll see, some of those warnings weren't just ignored, they were buried. The Dreamliner's journey from concept to reality was anything but smooth. Boeing's bold plan to source massive sections from around the globe, wings from Japan, fuselage from Italy, doors from France, landing gear from the UK, looked efficient on paper, but in practice it was a headache. Parts showed up late, out of spec, or missing paperwork, and engineers were left fixing mismatches and software glitches under tight deadlines. The game changer that was supposed to debut in 2008 didn't enter service until 2011, and those delays were just the beginning of much bigger problems. Just 2 years after entering service, the Dreamliner's safest jet in the sky image went up in smoke. Literally. In early 2013, 2 separate 787s suffered lithium-ion battery failures. One caught fire on the ground in Boston, another forced an emergency landing in Japan after smoke filled the cabin. The FAA responded with its first full fleet grounding since 1979, pulling every Dreamliner out of service until Boeing could redesign the battery system. 3 months later, the fix was in. But the damage to the 787's flawless reputation was already done. Just when Boeing thought the battery fiasco was over, another problem hit, this time at cruising altitude. Between 2016 and 2020, dozens of Dreamliners with Rolls-Royce Trent 1000 engines suffered alarming issues, unusual vibrations, sudden power loss, and even complete engine shutdowns mid-flight. Investigations found corrosion and cracks in intermediate pressure turbine blades. Parts designed to handle extreme stress for thousands of hours. In some cases, cracks were showing up after just 1,000 flights. The fallout was huge. Over 200 Dreamliners were pulled from service worldwide for inspections and repairs. Rolls-Royce admitted the fix would cost more than £2 billion and take years to complete. For airlines, it meant scrapping schedules and canceling long-haul flights. For Boeing, it was another serious hit to the 787's reliable image. By 2019, Boeing had a new problem, and this one was baked in at the factory. FAA inspections found fuselage gaps on some 787s up to 5 times bigger than Boeing's own limits. On a long-haul jet, that's not a cosmetic flaw. It's a structural risk that could worsen after thousands of pressurization cycles. Then came more ugly discoveries. Carbon fiber layers separating, debris left inside fuel tanks, and foreign objects near critical wiring. The solution? Ground over 100 Dreamliners and quietly send them through shadow factories for rework, all while airlines waited and costs piled up. It was clear the Dreamliner's problems weren't just happening in the air, they were being built into the plane from day one. If you think all these problems slipped through by accident, think again. Inside Boeing's plants, employees were raising red flags and paying the price for it. Engineer Sam Salahpour warned that unsafe gaps in 787 fuselage joins could weaken the structure mid-flight. Contractor Richard Cuevas claimed bulkhead holes were being drilled oversized to speed up paint removal, a shortcut he says could compromise strength. And former quality manager John Barnett went public about substandard parts and disabled safety alerts. Before being found dead in 2024, under circumstances his family still disputes. Their stories all share the same theme. Boeing was told repeatedly about critical flaws. But instead of hitting the brakes, the company kept the assembly lines moving, and those who spoke up often found themselves sidelined, fired, or fighting in court. This wasn't just a production problem, it was a culture problem. One that may have set the stage for the Dreamliner's first fatal crash. To understand why warnings kept getting ignored, you have to look at Boeing's culture. After merging with McDonnell Douglas in 1997, priorities shifted. Engineers lost influence to executives chasing stock prices, delivery targets, and quarterly profits. In 2001, leadership moved from Seattle to Chicago, distancing decision-makers from the factory floor. The results were clear. CEO Dennis Muilenburg pushed aggressive 737 MAX timelines, tied to 2 fatal crashes, then exited with $62 million. Dave Calhoun promised reform in 2020, but whistleblowers and FAA audits say the same production pressures remain. The FAA's self-certification system let Boeing sign off on much of its own work with minimal oversight. The Dreamliner's troubles aren't bad luck. They're the product of a system where speed and sales outrank safety. For airlines, every Boeing failure bleeds money. At $300 million per jet, grounded Dreamliners mean canceled routes, expensive leases, and unhappy passengers. Even loyal customers like Qatar Airways and Air New Zealand are shifting to the more reliable Airbus A350. Regulators are tightening inspections, and foreign agencies are running their own checks. The 787 was supposed to inspire instant trust. Now even its biggest buyers are asking, is it worth the risk? So, all those past issues, the battery fires, engine failures, fuselage gaps, ignored warnings, were just the prelude to what happened on June 12, 2025. In the aftermath of the crash, regulators moved fast. The FAA ordered urgent inspections of every U.S. Dreamliner, zeroing in on the forward pressure bulkhead already flagged for serious assembly flaws. They also reopened a probe into a VHF radio bug that could cut off ATC communication mid-flight. Abroad, authorities in Europe, India, and Japan launched their own investigations, and some airlines grounded parts of their fleets, just to be safe. The message was loud and clear. The Dreamliner is now under a global microscope, and every flaw, no matter how small, will be magnified. And that magnifying glass could carry real consequences. Regulators are already weighing temporary bans on new Dreamliner deliveries. European agencies are hinting at possible flight restrictions over their airspace. And insurance underwriters are reviewing premiums on all 787 operated routes. For Boeing, even a short-term sanction could mean billions lost and years of rebuilding trust. So, here's the real question. If Boeing's crown jewel can crash this hard, this fast, how safe do you really feel stepping on your next flight? If that thought shook you, hit subscribe now, because the next story we uncover could change the way you see the skies forever.